And here comes Mark Blundell on the outside line, unable to make a pass that time around, but Mark Blundell's car seems to be handling very nicely indeed, I'd say, at this stage.
It does, yes, very, very handily, but he doesn't seem to be rushing it. He's taking his time. Paul Tracy still in the background there. He lost the momentum earlier on, but he may well start to pick it up again as he picks up the slipstream from Mark Blundell's car. And around a racetrack like, oh no, Tracy suddenly slowed down. Tracy has suddenly slowed down to the inside of the racetrack, coming into the pits now. Is this a scheduled stop?
Yeah, it's probably about time because he was last in on lap 119, so he's done almost 40 laps, including that yellow. So yeah, that's about right for Paul Tracy. Into the pits here for the Penske team. John Boslog, our crew goes away. That is John Boslog, the crew chief, on the right front tyre there, left-hand side of the screen. Good stop there, throws the jack out of the way. Now he'll wait for the signal that the vent is clear, and he will give Paul Tracy the move to get back into the race. The car's off the jacks, off he goes, a cloud of smoke.
Great stop though for the Penske outfit once again, and Paul Tracy rejoins the action as Alex Zanardi leads. Paul Tracy rejoins, and with only, what, 5 cars, 6 cars on the lead lap, he should still come back out pretty well up.
Yeah, he did actually lose. You do lose a lap here when you come in to make a pit stop under green flag conditions. You do lose a lap. He came out behind the race leaders, but as you say, when the other guys come in to make their stops, and I'm sure Pruett and Herta will be in very, very shortly, and Alex Zanardi and Mark Blundell will be able to go a little bit longer. And here is Blundell making that move down the inside of Scott Pruett.
This is for second place. Mark Blundell really got a great run that time, and he goes through on the inside, and he can maybe use the bit of traffic to help him as well. He heard Scott Pruett just give a little lift in the middle of the corner there, and just doesn't seem to be able to run quite as quickly at the moment as he was earlier on. Blundell turns up into turn 3, quite a tight entry into turn 3. It opens up more on the exit of turn 4. Up high goes Mark on the exit of that corner, and then through the curve of the D here and across the start-finish line before the fairly wide open entrance into turn number 1 again. So there we see the lap of this Michigan Super Speedway. Zanardi still leads this race. Blundell is now in second place. Pruett is in third, Herta fourth, De Ferran fifth, and Paul Tracy, with that stop, is now down to 6th position.
Alex Zanardi turning some pretty quick laps. Last time around a 31.8. That's around about 226 miles an hour. So a pretty good lap by him. That's one of his quickest laps of the race so far. We're looking there at the battle for 3rd position. There is Brian Herta running in 4th place, right ahead of him there in 3rd position, the Brahma car of Scott Pruett.
Yeah, Scott Pruett's still in there. It's interesting, we've gathered just from the radio that Paul Tracy's got some problems out there at the moment, particularly with his radio and with the telemetry. Apparently they're struggling to pick up both transmissions from the pit, the radio in the helmet, and from the telemetry. So that causes problems for the teams because, of course, they read an awful lot of information from the telemetry as to the engine temperatures, engine pressures. They can really keep a very close eye on what's happening mechanically in the car from the pit wall. It looks as though Brian Herta is still just staying in position there. So that's going to cause some difficulties. It doesn't mean a disaster for Paul Tracy, but the Penske team will certainly maybe have to run a little bit more safe than they would otherwise because they don't really know what's going on in that car. Just staying on board at the moment with Scott Pruett. Looks as though he's coming in now, slowed it down, and Brian Herta coming in as well. So the next round of pit stops, Scott Pruett making his way down to Pat Patrick's Brahma Sports team. Brian Herta slots in a bit earlier along pit row into Team Ray Hall. Good battle. Now then, let's see who manages to get out first as well. Top of the picture is Scott Pruett. Bottom of the picture, the shell car of Brian Herta. The two of the top American racing drivers at the moment. America doing well in the Nations Cup battle. Oh no, that looks familiar. That's trying to get away and losing it. Brian Herta, the bottom of the picture. It could be another gearbox problem.
That is just unbelievable. All these problems with these Reynard gearboxes, they really have no major problems, at least so far this season. We did see, as we talked about earlier, Greg Moore lost first gear. He stripped the gear in Milwaukee, was able to get going again. And, well, they've managed to get that engine refired, and off goes Brian Herta. With a bit of luck, there'll be no lasting damage to the shell car.
Yeah, it looks as though he's still got some lower gears, even if he hasn't got perhaps first. I don't quite know what happened there. Let's watch on board Gilles de Ferran. Let's just listen for a moment. If we get the chance, it'd be nice to just listen and see what the getaway is like. That one sounded all right. He got away safely.
Yeah, that's fine, isn't it?
It's sort of heart in mouth now every time somebody makes a pit stop. But Gilles de Ferran gets away safely. No gearbox troubles for him that time around. And remember, he is still on the lead lap, still up there, but he's taking things fairly carefully at the moment. Zanardi is our race leader. Mark Blundell is second. Welcome back to the Michigan Speedway, where Alex Zanardi still leads this race. Mark Blundell has just been into the pits and he's got out safely, you'll be glad to hear. He didn't have any gearbox problems. It looks as though Zanardi's coming in this lap. So then we will have seen all of the leaders coming in over the last few laps. So this is the last important stop amongst the leaders, and let's hope that he also manages to get in and out safely, as we've seen most of them do just recently.
173 laps in the books here, so 77 still to go. There goes Paul Tracy and Mark Blundell to regain the lead lap going past the pits, and Scott Pruett, as Alex Zanardi is having regular service here by Rob Hill and the crew. There is the Australian-born Rob Hill on the right front wheel, the signal to go, and off goes Alex Zanardi. Pretty clean getaway, don't have too much wheel spin there, don't put too much strain on that transmission, and Alex Zanardi clean stop back out into the race.
So that worked perfectly well. Will Zanardi be ahead once he's up to speed? We'll wait and see. There, just going past him is Gugelmin, who came in a moment ago when we were in the commercial break. Maurizio Gugelmin came in with a blown left front tyre. A very scary thing. We gathered that Johnson had a problem with a blown tyre earlier on, and Maurizio Gugelmin coming in with a deflated left front, which looked in a bit of a state, but he managed to get it in safely, and they put another wheel on and straight back out again. Maurizio Gugelmin, although he's 6 laps down, is still running in 10th place, and that means that he's in the points. Remember, they score points all the way down to 12th position here. But Zanardi is back out on the track now, having made his pit stop, and it looks as though he's retained the lead. Paul Tracy is in 2nd position. Mark Blundell is now in 3rd place with Scott Pruett not far behind him in 4th, just a second between Mark and Scott Pruett. Then Gilles de Ferran is in 5th position and Brian Herter is in 6th place. We've then got quite a big gap, more than a lap back to the next car. In 7th place, Michel Jourdain. No problems for Vitolo. Then, oh no, it's Pruett! It's Pruett! Scott Pruett has hit the wall. The yellow car, number 20 of Scott Pruett, who was running in 4th place, is out of the race. He has wiped out the right front and damaged the right rear as well. And Scott Pruett, now his chance of scoring well here comes to an end, and we're down to 5 competitive cars in this race.
Yes, that's a shame for Scott Pruett. Valuable points down the tubes there for Scott Pruett. He won the point for the pole, and a good top 3 or 4 finish here would have put him right back in the championship standings. But with Alex Zanardi and Paul Tracy running 1st and 2nd at this stage in a race, that spells bad news for Scott Pruett. He's okay, just a helping hand out of that car, but he seems to be perfectly all right, which is excellent news once again. And here we have a replay on the right-hand side of the screen. I think is Scott Pruett. He just runs a little bit higher. As Arndt Meyer was ahead of him there, and you just stray a little bit offline at this sort of speed. Here we are on board with Scott Pruett.
It's almost a carbon copy, isn't it? Again, off the power, fairly early in the corner, but it's just too late by then. You can't do anything about it. Almost a carbon copy of the incident with Bobby Rahal, but just slightly less destructive, because he just hit at a slightly different angle, but very, very similar incident indeed. Scott Pruett on his own, effectively, although still in the dirty air of other cars. It's very effective, that dirty air. You can be quite a long way behind somebody, you still get affected by the turbulence. There is team owner Pat Patrick, one of the longest serving team owners on the scene. But what a disastrous end to the day for Scott Pruett, and what a great shame. We've seen Raoul Boesel, his teammate, already out of this race with transmission failure, and now Scott Pruett has crashed that car heavily indeed. And of course the pits are now opened for the leaders, but most of the leaders have only just recently made their stops.
That's right. Alex Zanardi was only in just a couple of laps before that caution, and it's only lucky for the rest of the field that that Pruett didn't hit the wall a couple of laps earlier. If that had been the case, Alex Zanardi would have probably been a lap out ahead of the field on his own. But as it is, I think we'll see another round of pit stops fairly shortly, but not just yet.
Oh, now this is interesting. Paul Tracy has decided to come into the pits. He was running in second place.
Yeah, but he would be the first to make a stop under this sequence of pit stops. He was actually in about 15 laps ago, so he was halfway through a fuel stint. He comes in now. He should be able to get to the end of this race with one more stop, and that's what the Penske team is looking at. Might as well make the stop now. He doesn't really lose any time. He'll fall to fourth position, but he'll still remain on the lead lap, and he, like the rest of the field, will be able to make it to the finish on one more stop. Interesting to see now whether Gilles de Ferran elects to do the same. Maybe they got enough fuel on board to make it to the end. He was in 10 laps to go for his last stop, and he could probably make it to the end on one more, but I think that's fairly tight, so we might see Gilles de Ferran in pretty soon.
He might. The reasoning there is that he could make it through, but he may have to run the engine fairly lean to do it. So in those closing stages where you really want to be able to run the engine at full power and as rich a fuel mixture as possible, Gilles may have to be backing it off, and therefore it might be better for him to come in now and be able to run at full pace throughout the rest of the race. So let's just wait and see if he does that. As you say, we've got 73 laps to go. As we know, it's around about 35 laps on each tank of fuel. It's about a gallon a lap around this track. In fact, 2-mile track, and so your fuel economy is not that good. You're only doing, but that's of course the standard for the Indy cars, around 2 miles per gallon. And with methanol, of course, which is what these cars run on, they use more anyway than petrol. The economy with methanol is much less good than with normal petrol. Brian Herter deciding to do the same, so that he can run through on just one more stop in this race. There is the poor, sad-looking car of Scott Pruett that's being taken away now. And the Reynard Spares department is going to be fairly busy this week.
Certainly are. Luckily, the contenders now have a week off, of course, to prepare their cars for the next race, a road course race at Mid-Ohio, about a 3-hour drive from here. Indianapolis is where many of these teams are based. That's about a 3.5-hour drive from here as well. So they'll be back there this evening, and as you say, the Reynard Parts department will be extremely busy there in North Indianapolis tomorrow afternoon, delivering parts to these teams.
Jeremy, why is it that this sort of northeastern part of the United States seems to be the centre for so many PPG kart races?
Well, Indianapolis is the spiritual home of the sport, and many of the teams are based there. There's a lot of racetracks up there. Historically, motor racing, and particularly road racing, has been extremely strong in this area, and really vicariously, oval track racing also has become very popular. We've had, at this Michigan Speedway facility, there's this super speedway. There is the road course that we talked about as well. But there's just a lot of racetracks in this area, and there's a tremendous fan base. Chicago, Detroit, large metropolitan areas, a lot of race fans, a pretty good crowd here on hand this afternoon, and racing is a very popular sport in this part of the world.
Of course, close to Motor City, Detroit, where the manufacturing plants of the big manufacturers here in the United States are based, so I guess that must have a fair bit to do with it, certainly historically as well.
Absolutely right, and a lot of the people who work in the automotive factories turn out to be, they're not just car fans, they're race fans, and the major manufacturers will have a lot of guests here this afternoon. I know there's a lot of guests here from Ford this weekend, and it is a very popular sport in this part of the world, and tremendously enthusiastic race fans. A very, very hot, humid day this afternoon, but the fans are out in the force.
Interesting little discussion there. It looked like Adrian Reynard was talking to Chip Ganassi, and I imagine Chip must be very concerned about the various gearbox problems that have been suffered by the Reynards here this afternoon. Of course, we've got, at the moment, of the 5 leading cars, the 5 cars who are really in this race, 4 of them are Reynards, 1 of them is a Penske, and that's the story at the moment. And Chip Ganassi obviously in discussion with Adrian Reynard. Probably they're trying to work out a way, as much as anything, if they know they've got to make one more stop, what's the safest way of making that stop? They're probably asking, well, do you think it's better to be easy on the clutch, or is it better to be hard on the clutch? Sometimes it's actually better to release the clutch quickly, sometimes it's better to let the power come in more smoothly, and maybe they're all trying to just stand there and work out what's the best way of doing it.
Yeah, it's certainly, I know Adrian Reynard will be concerned. They had some problems a couple of years ago, mainly on the road courses with that transmission, and they went home and did a little bit of a redesign. They work in conjunction with X-Track, gearbox specialists based there in the Maidenhead area, and they work together on this transmission. The parts are actually built by X-Track, but it's to a Reynard design, and I know there'll be some long hours spent in those two facilities over the next couple of weeks, trying to work out exactly what's happened this afternoon.
It's amazing how it's only happened here. I know this is a very different kind of racetrack to whatever we've seen so far this year. And by the way, we've got 2 laps until the green flag comes out. We've just been told